Hi, my name is Yarza Ong. I go by he, him pronouns, and this is my intro video. Um, I kind of like to start off by saying that while I am apparently Asian, I am actually a very niche kind of Asian. So, my parents come from a country in Southeast Asia called Myanmar. It's all the way like down in the southeast, like near Laos or like Vietnam, like in that general area. And there's really not a lot of us here in America, but my parents immigrated here back in, I want to say like around the 90s, where they came here for just looking for like a better life, which is like obviously like a pretty common story. Nowadays, like I reside in Queens, Bayside, so I guess technically I'm a city kid. Um, and yeah, so I'm a first gen New Yorker. So as to live theater, I haven't really personally involved myself with a lot of theater intentionally, but I did a lot of theater back in like elementary school. Like I remember doing West Side Story. I remember doing what's the one? It's I think it's called Oliver, where he has like the bowl of porridge and he's like really poor and they sing a song about food, like food, glorious food, like something like that. Like I remember doing that. So I guess I do have like a little bit of experience in theater. Like those times from my childhood like really does stick out to me as kind of like a more fun kind of social learning when I was young. And some fun facts. Oh God, where do I go? So I'm a really big walker. So back home when I have nothing to do, I will walk like 20K steps a day, usually with my friends and stuff like that. We'll like chat, gossip, like whatever. I'm a big foodie, so I'm on this app called Belly, which is kind of like a food rating app, but it's an invite only app where you invite your friends and you can rate restaurants together and you can see like, oh, if your friend's been to this restaurant, like what their rating was. So that's something else I like to do. And one more fun fact. Mm. Mm-hmm. Let's go with um I've currently injured my thumb because I was playing volleyball and I dislocated it the first week I got to Binghamton. Oh wait, that like speaking of which, it is my first semester at Binghamton. I'm a sophomore, but I studied abroad my first year in Italy and Spain. I should have led with that, so slipped my mind. Okay. So in response to seeing Hamilton, if I had to use three words to describe it, it would definitely be ambitious, tragic, and wild. I think that Hamilton kind of highlights how strongly like people aspire for something. Like Hamilton's persona himself is like he is trying to make the best of his relationship through Washington and his role in the army, and we actually see this dynamic between him and Aaron Burr where it's like a fight over achieving for something greater versus choosing not to really take action. And that kind of like the reason I say so I think like that's the ambitious part of it. I think like the wild part is a little more in like Hamilton himself. He's definitely like a more like reckless individual. And we see that even like in like Philip and his son, they both ended up getting themselves killed because they were a little like reckless and wild. I think this also ties into the tragedy. It kind of speaks to how people who search or are driven for greater things don't always get it the way they would like to. They always say like, oh, you should shoot for the stars, and if you don't get there, you'll land on the moon. But sometimes like in life, like you won't even land on the moon. You'll just drop back onto the ground, and that's life. Um, hmm. I think if I was gonna name a theme, I definitely think it is moderation. I think the reason Hamilton gets so far is obviously because he's ambitious. Like he makes a lot of achievements during his time in his like military campaign, but ultimately the reason he gets killed is because he can't really get along with others. Um, he kind of like puts himself in direct contrast to characters like Aaron Burr, who are also like technically of like high standing and high rank, but they have different ideologies. Like Hamilton's not really the kind of person who can compromise on that. And because he's so ambitious, like that ends up getting him killed. But I think there's like another side to this, right? Like maybe like Aaron Burr's own theology is not so right. Like he kind of says, I forgot exactly what it is, but it's like just like shut up and smile, or like something like that. Like he kind of represents the inaction that's contrary to Hamilton's like I'm not throwing away my shot, like his like really famous quote. Um, and I think through this, like the actors really wanted to inspire us with Hamilton's story, but I think they also wanted to teach us like that ambition can be your fatal flaw. That you have to like while being driven for something greater, you kind of have to watch yourself. You have to be careful, and you have to understand when to pick your battles and where to back off and where to make opportunities and when to kind of hold off and not bite off more than you can chew. And I definitely think they were like successful in that. Like Hamilton is obviously so famous partly because it drives such a emotional response from its viewers. So, and also a response to current events. Let's see. So to start off with like the idea of owning your own, I think what it means to own your own is kind of to take charge of yourself to make change. Um, I actually want to relate it back to A Raisin in the Sun and what the author, I forgot what her name was. Hansberry. So I think like what Hansberry said about having to understand your own like specific self before becoming like universal is like kind of plays into that. Like we have to understand our own identity before we can be inclusive of others and be like universally like inclusive. I think like that is like what owning your own means. And regarding like statistics, the one that really stood out to me was here, I have it right here. So basically in MIC, about 41% of us are white and 59% of us are people of color. But in theater hiring, it's 76% of people who are getting hired who are white and 23% who are getting hired who are people of color. And obviously there's like a very clear like discrepancy in like numbers there between like population and who's being chosen to be hired. And obviously that's like not fair, and we have to like do something to fix that. Just to quickly sum up like these current event articles, like the first one is about Lin-Manuel Miranda's letter condemning racism, especially after George Floyd's death. The second was actually probably my favorite. It was a powerful letter, almost threatening statement, acknowledging injustice in the industry, using the phrase "I see you" as like a call out. The third article briefly talks about Hamilton's colorblind casting, because a lot of these people in history in Hamilton's story was not a person of color like in history, but Hamilton, the musical, made a choice to cast people of color. The fourth article is kind of like a direct critique of Hamilton. It actually says what I think is interesting, that while race may have been paid attention to, stuff like gender like wasn't really. So it says that women were not really treated fairly. And the last article is kind of, I thought it was a little silly. It was like calling him the ultimate millennial, and talks about how Gen Z like criticizes him. I thought that one was like a little silly. But I think like the reason Professor Ian made us read these is because it really does bring us into like the current like social turmoil over inequality and discrepancy in treatment of people of color, and also kind of how like we've kind of taken a stance to call out to it. Like these social things, these things that are happening in the article, they relate directly to the statistics that are happening. We're kind of realizing that there's inequality there. And just to relate that back to Hamilton, I think like Hamilton as a form of media and theater is a really big step to calling out on this. Hamilton chose to cast Aaron Burr as a black man when Aaron Burr was not necessarily black. It is like the first step in making change in these unfair statistics. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.